Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity podcast. This is Aniket and I have Dr. Byrd with me. Dr. Byrd, welcome to another episode.
Hey, Aniket. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode talking about technology. I'm always excited to join you, Aniket.
Hey, awesome. So this time we are going to talk about the talk of the town, the Mythos, Claude Mythos, the model that really changed the way people have been looking at AI as an opportunity to now looking at it like a serious threat. It all began just a few weeks ago, and once people learned about its capabilities, then they have been quite curious about it. Dr. Byrd, what is this Mythos and why is it so mysterious?
Yep. Aniket, that's a great question. When we start conversations, I like to level set with people and talk about the state of technology and even the state of AI. And I ground that conversation with a basic foundation of technology, people, and business. So when we think about technology, remember, these are the tools, the machines, the system. They can be tangible, our devices, our smartphones, our tablets, and they can be intangible, our software, our hardware, our platforms.
Yes.
People are the interaction, the doers of the work, and business is about the advantage, using technology to gain advantage. Now, when it comes to the LLMs, and in particularly Mythos, we have been having conversations around vulnerabilities and vulnerability exploitation. And vulnerabilities are the flaws and weaknesses in technology and security systems that, allow for the criminals to, exploit. And that's really in a nutshell. And what we've been having conversations around is that, hey, if you're running software, hardware that's end of life, vulnerable software that threat actors can access and deploy and exploit, then, you have a challenge. And what that's really speaking to is the foundation of our cyber programs.
Yes.
Asset categorization, asset management, whether that be people, servers, devices, our networks, making sure that we are applying and employing those best practices to understand the technology, work with our vendors, do the appropriate scanning, and implement the patching and patch management, the remediation of the vulnerability.
Absolutely. But despite of doing all this, how is it that this new Mythos, what is this Mythos all about?
Well, again, Mythos is an LLM that has these advanced capabilities to identify vulnerabilities within technology. So Anthropic, as we've discussed, has been utilized in the government in different various aspects.
Yeah.
And it has these capabilities, from offensive and defensive cyber perspective.
Right.
In addition to the, having the government application, it has commercial applications as well.
Right.
So whether it's Mythos or OpenAI or DeepSeek, these LLMs are becoming more advanced and sophisticated, and they have the ability to detect and identify vulnerabilities within the ecosystem. And
Very true.
Is onerous on us as tech, professionals, whether it's cyber or CIOs or CISOs, to understand, how to mitigate these risks. And I often tell, people to couch and organize your organization into the foundational frameworks that really make sense, so you aren't overwhelmed by the newest technological advancements or challenges from the offensive or defensive side. We ground ourselves through the cybersecurity framework, where we understand what our organizations are doing to protect, detect, respond, and ultimately govern security risks and controls. And the NIST has a new cyber AI profile that talks about secure, defend, and thwarting, preventing cyber attacks. And that really couches into the conversations that we started around technology, business, and people, right? And it addresses all of those neatly. Any thoughts, Aniket?
Yeah, I think the same model or all of these models, this entire problem can be looked at it from two different perspectives. One perspective is from the users, the companies that are purchasing the tokens for these and then deploying them in the organizations. And
Yes.
they are using it for a variety of purposes like security testing. People used to spend 2 to 3 weeks performing a penetration test,
Yes.
identifying vulnerabilities, and people have had jobs that specialize in this. But now, because model like Mythos has got so many capabilities from a technology perspective, being also the ability to find or build exploits to exploit that vulnerability that it has found, which means from a user perspective, they are going to get a lot of benefits. From the provider's perspective, that's a different angle altogether. Nowadays, as Claude came up with this model, there are a lot of other providers as well who have been saying, hey, we have something similar, but we just did not get it out yet because we thought it might not be too safe. And now that Mythos is out and there is this entire project Glasswing around it, other providers are also launching similar things. So, is it possible to say that in the future we can see AI or AI models that are being seen as a deterrent? That, hey, you can't really attack this company. We know they've got this kind of a model that's already going on over there.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting idea, and you can see technology definitely as a deterrent. As these
Yeah,
large corporations, the tech providers, all have these capabilities on the offensive and defensive side. It often
right.
drives capitalism. From our standpoint, from the users, from the customer, the client standpoint, we have to make sure that we are taking the appropriate actions to secure what we can, whether that's in
Right.
the platform where we have this shared environment, right, with our cloud
Yeah.
providers and things of that nature, or our
Yeah.
on-prem providers, right, our on-prem ecosystem, which
Hmm.
has, our really responsibility to manage and mitigate the vulnerabilities from that standpoint. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of different facets and perspectives on how your network, your enterprise, your organization is architected, whether
Yeah.
you're in the cloud, right, on platform kind of
Yeah.
shared responsibility model, or on-prem. And what's
Right.
really unique that the Project Glasswing brings to light is, we have the 16 sectors of the critical infrastructure, whether that's the
Yes.
oil and gas, whether that's transportation, the airline companies, the bus companies, and everyone doesn't have the same robust technology cyber team to
Yeah.
defend, right?
Right.
So
Right.
the challenge becomes, how does the smaller shops, right, the smaller organizations, the small transportation companies or the hospitals or the clinics that rely on technology to provide services,
Hmm.
products, goods, how do
Hmm.
they defend themselves? And that's why the notion of patch management and understanding what's in the ecosystem, what's in your enterprise, and having that relationship with vendors to say, hey, I can
Yeah.
patch and mitigate, what I have in place. That's a great starting point.
That's true. Because I talked about two perspectives earlier, and you emphasized on that just now, that using these, the companies should connect this with their existing cybersecurity framework. Don't think about this as an alien problem that we don't know how to solve.
Exactly.
It's just another cybersecurity problem, and we solve it the same way we have been solving problems so many years until now.
Exactly.
Now, there's a third angle as well, because the tool axis is as much as it is, or it could be, with the defenders. It can also be with the offenders, the hackers, the dark web forums, or even the criminal gangs that have been, or the organized cybercrime units that have been performing a lot of ransomware activities. If one of them gets access to something like a Mythos, the amount of ransomware attacks that we would see in a year is simply going to shoot up. And that's the potential risk. And that also brings me to another point, as in, what about responsible development? If the companies know that this kind of functionality is way too enhanced, can't they put some guardrails around it?
Yeah, I think so. There's so many facets. Every angle we look at, there's multiple facets. So if
Yeah.
you're talking about from a software development company, if I'm a startup company and I want to produce a new application or web
Yeah.
service, I can certainly use, the AI tools, whether it's, Mythos, Mythos in particular is not, available, right, for public dissemination. But if I'm
Yeah.
using, any of the OpenAI platforms or what have you, I can use that to scan my code to reduce the attack surface. If there are gaps and vulnerabilities, interdependencies and libraries that create vulnerabilities, I can hopefully
Yes.
mitigate that on the front end. From the tech provider standpoint, sure, it is onus on them, the large
Hmm.
companies, to put
Hmm.
guardrails in place. And you start
Yeah.
to see that in some of the social media applications and things of that
Hmm.
nature, the algorithms that are there to
Yeah.
protect, young people, to protect seniors from things that are just disinformation, false truths, and things like that, that is also generated from these LLMs. There's so many
Hmm.
different facets and perspectives that we could, pivot, have a discussion, and there's
Hmm.
offensive and defensive and responsibilities from each angle, each, viewpoint.
That's right. And so from a learner perspective, imagine one of our learners who is doing the cybersecurity program from Johns Hopkins University. They are looking at this podcast. What should be their key takeaways when it comes to a threat emerging as Claude Mythos?
Well, I would tell them to ground themselves in the foundation of our course material,
Hmm.
understanding your landscape. What is your
Hmm.
technology ecosystem? And that's asset management. It's
Yeah.
founded in this conversation that I started around
Hmm.
people, technology, right? And
Yeah.
the organization. Once you
Right.
get a handle on those things, basic
Hmm.
cyber hygiene, when you're onboarding technology, what does that
Yeah.
look like? Are you
Yeah.
having conversations with your tech providers to understand who's responsible for, the management, what that cycle looks like, patch
Yes.
management, that interaction,
Yes.
controlling data, access controls, resetting default passwords, credentials? Those are the cyber hygiene things that we've talked about throughout the course, as Aniket articulated. And that's what we can do to reduce the attack surface from the
Hmm.
Mythos perspective. Asset
Right.
management is also important. And then understanding how technology works, is
Hmm.
so important as well.
Right.
So, that's a lot happening, but, understanding and being inquisitive around technology, doing the
Yeah.
continual reading and learning is how we all stay abreast in this changing dynamic landscape.
That's right. There is one addition that I would like to make to this list, Dr. Byrd, and I completely agree with you. Starting with asset management, knowing what you protect and how are you protecting it, and putting that risk management perspective on top of that, that's going
Yes.
to give you a really good visibility and make security more predictable.
Yes.
Now, that additional point that I wanted to mention was imagine, like, okay, let me rephrase that. Before the pandemic, everybody assumed that a pandemic is a really distant possibility. We are not going to experience that. But that changed overnight. This Claude Mythos is also a similar threat, which earlier people had not really considered to be probable. But now that we have seen one model capable of some extreme things, one or other, every company who is doing a risk assessment from an AI perspective, they should look at this possibility. What if tomorrow, let's say, ChatGPT or OpenAI has a different model that has some extreme capability? How are we going to perform the risk assessment against that? What kind of policies or what kind of procedures can we have to protect your crown jewels against an intrusive AI model? Would you agree?
Yep, I agree 100%. And you said something that was really critical we don't talk about enough, but policies, right?
Yeah.
Policies are the foundation for good governance, right? For
Yes.
good management in any organization.
Yes.
Governance and policy sets the rules and regulations so you don't have the shadow AI existing, because you know that your security teams, your CIO, your technology teams are evaluating technology from a data protection, from a security protection standpoint before things are
Yeah.
onboarded, right? So
Yes.
you just
Yes.
don't have, individuals within the organization that may have good intent
Hmm.
uploading, downloading software that's unapproved, losing, access to, sensitive information, proprietary information within your organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So, Dr. Byrd, today we discussed a lot of points about Mythos being a deterrent. We talked about organizations sticking to the foundational aspects like the cybersecurity framework and continuing to use that as the primary tool to deal with any situation or any incidents that may happen in the future. Any closing notes before we finish or end this episode?
Hey, remember to stay active with your learning and interaction with your tech providers to understand what the new capabilities are and have fun with it. As Aniket articulated, this tech landscape is constantly changing, and that's what is exciting about technology and cybersecurity.
Yep. And as Dr. Byrd mentioned, keep learning and keep practicing. Keep your eye on the network. Keep an eye on what's happening in the news. So read the cybersecurity news every day, and you're going to learn immensely. Thank you so much, Dr. Byrd, for joining us for another episode on cybersecurity. And we would all meet everyone in the next episode of the Great Cyber Podcast. Thank you so much. This is Aniket Ambekar signing off.
Hey, thank you, Aniket. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.